thousands of nameless, faceless soldiers on whose shoulders the daily business of war rides. They are not professional military men and women. Rather, they are farmers, steel workers, accountants, and the like. They are the unknown whom history little notes nor long remembers. When John Strathern's formal schooling ended, he went to work as a coal miner. When the Civil War began, he, like so many others, went to work as a soldier. As a member of the Army of the Potomac, John took part in skirmishes and great battles, but his letters home, collected and arranged by Marlene Clifford Bombera, a descendant family member, do not describe the war per se. They are personal glimpses into the experience of a Union soldier and his family, much like your family members may have written home when they were far away, embroiled in their country's wars.
My name is Corporal John Strathern. My father Thomas and my mother Ellen had 6 sons and 1 daughter. We came to our adopted land when I was 11 years old, and I attended elementary and high school in Library, Pennsylvania, before our family moved to Braddock's Fields. We older Strathern boys worked in the coal mines to augment my father's earnings as a shoemaker. It is my firm belief that there is one broad foundation upon which we can all mutually unite in defense of our very Constitution, Union, citizens, and soil. We are all willing to defend the land of our adoption with our lives and become identified with the free-born sons of America in her defense. Therefore, on April 17, 1861, shortly after I turned 23, I traveled to Pittsburgh to sign up for 3 years service in the Union Army. On July 21st, my regiment, the 8th Pennsylvania Reserve Corps, left for Washington, D.C. Keeping in close touch with my parents, my brothers, and my sister Margaret was very important to me. So I wrote letters to them at every opportunity. Not wanting them to worry over much about me, I did not dwell on the dangers of war in my letters. Although a shoemaker by trade, my father was also a minister. On Sundays, he was the local Christian church's village minister. I wanted my family to be aware that religion remained an important part of my life, and that my morals would not suffer while I was away. On August 8th, I explained the difficulty in a letter to my parents. You speak of there being a Christian church in Washington. I am nearly 5 miles from the city, and if I were in reach, I could not get to go. Under no circumstances can any soldier, either officer or private, leave camp on Lord's Day or any other day without a pass. And this will not be granted except on the most urgent business. Knowing this news would not sit well with my parents, I reassured them that my opinion had not changed. And on September 15th I wrote, I am sorry for the men who have so bad an opinion of the morals of the Army as to suppose that we are so degraded as to be unfit companions. As for tipplers and gamblers, I think their morals can't suffer much. I think that we would not suffer much in the contrast. Perhaps it's well that they are not here, for they might not be able to restrain their passion for this vice. All gambling is expressly prohibited in the Army, and if the law is violated, they would be punished severely, and such men might bring disgrace on a decent company. One sadness of war is realizing that, in many ways, we are our enemy's brothers. I wanted my mother and father to be aware of my encounter with some of the rebels. So on September 24th, I related this meeting. Those we saw belonged to the 30th Virginia Regiment and are men of refined manners and good education, and talked as if there was nothing between us. One of them with whom we conversed remarked that it seemed like foolishness for us to be fighting against each other. And still, nothing personal between us, he wished that he might never meet us in arms, and wished that the war was over. I must add one more little incident that caused me to ponder. One of our men asked the rebel captain if he knew anything of this book, at the same time holding up a pack of cards. said the rebel. What book? Said Blackley, the history of the 4 kings. No, sir, said the rebel captain, this is my book, at the same time holding up the New Testament. How embarrassing for us all, though I doubt he was quick enough to catch the rebel captain's rebuke. I feel it is my duty, not just as a son, but as a soldier, to reassure the loved ones at home that I am doing all that I can to maintain the physical and spiritual health I was granted. It is all I can do to try to alleviate some of the concerns they have for my welfare and for the overall health of the Union. Though I sometimes fear I might not be striking the right course to assuage them. My sister Margaret might agree, as she has suggested that I have been neglectful of Mother, but the day I would do that intentionally will never be. I was glad, at least, to learn that my dear father's friend, James Johnson, wrote to him after we met and assured him of my well-being, and also explained that, while stories they hear of rabble-rousing soldiers are sadly true and real, there are many of us who are, in his words, trying to live and do right. Were you to read through all of my letters, you would see how frequently I sent money home to my parents, thanks to the value of prudence they instilled on me. On October 3rd, I wrote to assure them of my reasoning on this matter. I think it better, Father, to send my money home to you than to keep it here and lose it, as many have done, or have it stolen. More than this, if a man have money in this place, he will spend it, and at the end of the month he will not be able to show what he got for it. This is the experience of some in this camp. I find that today I have as much, if not more, than those who have kept all their wages or sent a mere trifle home. If I could keep it as well as you, I may be killed, and if I fall, I would rather my friends have what I have earned than my foes. Besides, if any person has a right to use of the money, certainly you have. Should I be spared to return to you, we will talk of recompense. Never want, while you still have any money belonging to me, I send it for your use. Only 23 years of age, I am not married, nor have I committed myself to any young lady, although some seem to think otherwise. Love, after all, is or should be a serious business to a man. Speculation seems to center around a Miss Ella Wilkins. On November 8th, I requested that my brother Alex inform our sister Margaret that I do not wish in any way to interfere with Mr. McLaughlin speaking to Miss Ella, and if he chooses to assume a closer relationship, he has my consent, and may success attend his efforts is my prayer. Along those lines, I did ask a favor of Alex. James wrote to me some time ago saying that he had got my likeness from Ella. I told him to give it to you-know-who. I gave you full instructions when I left, and you promised. Make of that what you will. Perhaps it strikes Margaret's fancy to contrive a romance for me, and on December 12th, I requested that Father convey a message to her from me. Tell Margaret that I am not in the habit of making rash promises, and do not lose my heart at the sight of a hoop skirt, as the ladies do at the sight of a broadcloth coat. Along those same lines, I worried about my brother James. On January 5th, 1862, I shared my concerns with Father. I am sorry to hear that James is so foolish. I flatter myself that I have seen enough of the world and the fair sex generally to know that they say one thing and mean another. Anything to trap a fellow. I will write to him soon and see what I can do. In the society of the fair sex, I was considered an ignoramus. I know because I steadily resisted all their advances, although I was not as dumb as I professed. My motto is, look before you take such a leap. Such things are not readily undone, it being a lifetime of happiness or misery that we bargain for at wedlock's altar. Having shared my opinion with James, on January 26th, I wrote to Margaret, you say James gives you all the gas about what I wrote to him. I expect he will give me the gas when he writes me next. If he marries so soon as he speaks of, I expect to find him a model henpecked husband. That is, I don't expect to find much of him on my return. Thought I brought this part of my narrative to conclusion by happily sharing my letter of March 1st to Margaret, which I tweaked her just a little bit. I am happy to hear that reason has resumed her throne in James's brain. I can easily believe you when you say that you and James could not hit it off when he had the matrimonial fever. For no doubt you have forgotten the day when you were as bad as him, and worse, for you did not stop until you got the halter around your own neck. Consistency, thou art a jewel. Margaret, however, continued to allude to some fancy love interest of mine. On July 1st, I let her know that I was done with it. May I ask if you will be kind enough to let me know who you call my old woman? I am not aware of any words having been said to give any woman that position. Be kind enough to tell me who the favored individual is, and you will do me a kindness. Well, the whole thing is just this. I don't want my chickens counted before they are hatched. I never was in any hurry about jumping the broomstick. I have lost all the romantic notions about love in a cottage which some indulge. That will do well enough for a novel writer, but won't do for practice. When that is said, all is said and done. As hard as I tried to keep my focus of the letters on mundane and family matters, it would be foolish to try to pretend that I was not a soldier away from home, involved in a cruel war. The comforts of home seemed far from my camp. I knew that my family wanted to hear of my conditions, of my new life. Less than a month after leaving them, I reported to my parents. As far as my health is concerned, I think you have but little to fear. Our regiment was out on picket guard 3 miles from this place towards the Potomac for 24 hours. On our homeward march, the rain poured down in torrents and the roads were completely submerged. Our tents were all wet inside, the water having completely overflowed the floor of them, the earth being the only floor we can get. And that was pretty damp, as you will be able to judge. On September 6, 1861, I let my parents on more of a soldier's life. On Wednesday, we were ordered out double quick time to go to Great Falls in the Potomac, 12 miles from this place. The order was received about 2 o'clock, and in 3 minutes we were in line and in motion. I have just got home and had only 6 hours sleep in the last 72 hours. The balance of that time we have been all over creation. We must have traveled over 70 miles. It rained most of the time and we slept on the ground. We exchanged a few random shots with the enemy pickets without any damage to us. I knew my family followed the war news of battles won and lost, so I apprised them of my own day-to-day experiences. In my letter of September 15th, I wrote, I expect that you know about as much of the movements of the Army as we do, for we know nothing about where we are going when we start on a march till we get to the spot, and scarcely then so much for the good management of General McClellan. You no doubt will see the necessity of this, for news travels fast in these times, as your letters show. We have to keep 2 days' rations cooked so as to be able to march at any moment. General McCall says that he has but to send the order, and before he can turn himself, the 8th Regiment is on its way double quick time. I would have gone to see the Braddock Field boys, but this is almost impossible, as we are kept lying on our arms, never knowing what day or moment we will march. Perhaps only another soldier can fully appreciate the experiences of another. Nonetheless, our friend James Johnson described his situation, Father. While we were lying 3 miles from Alexandria, where Ellsworth was shot. Ellsworth became an immediate hero when he was shot while removing a Confederate flag from the roof of a building. I was in the house he was shot in. The floor where he fell when he was shot has been all cut up and sent to different parts of the Union, and so have the stairs and a railing up 3 floors. Even the shingles on the roof where he walked up to take down the secession flag. The town is almost deserted. It has no more than 2,000 inhabitants in it out of 22,000. The balance has gone south. The country around here is deserted of people, but the soldiers and the hills white with pine and elm. Horses being driven can be heard continually, and the sound of the cannon and muskets can be heard from daybreak till evening. And so it goes here. A letter from William Morrow that was written to Hugh Woods was forwarded to me. He too was affected by Ellsworth's actions. I visited the Marshall House where poor Ellsworth met his end. I saw rough bearded men shed tears as they stood and gazed on the spot where that noble young being died for its flag. And no doubt many an oath was then registered in heaven of vengeance on his slayers. Morrow too was struck by the desolation that follows the battle. He continued, we crossed the river on Saturday evening and camped till 11 o'clock the next day. In the morning I ran all around the place, and what a scene of desolation meets the eye. It reminds me of the fulfillment of the prophecy against the city of Babylon. No life, no sounds of industry, all silent and deserted. Here and there you see a soldier stationed on one corner as a sentinel. Surely a curse has fallen on this city, for beautiful it certainly is. Although touched by the waist, Morrow disdained all that had once been part of the South. He wrote, "There is a mansion house alongside of our camp, said to be one of Colonel Lee's. I do my writing on a splendid marble center table, chewing my own tobacco and spitting where I please." Personal items were in short supply, with no stores available for purchasing, and winter was coming. In spite of the fact that I did not like to cause my family worry, I needed their help. On November 7th, I wrote to my father, "Please to knit me 2 pair of gloves and send them to me. Knit the gloves with a thumb and forefinger, the other 3 like a mitten. Please knit the gloves long so they will come well up in the wrist. If you can get me a pair of boots made and send them, it will be a great favor. If you do, get your measure taken with 2 socks and have them made roomy and long in the legs. Also pretty wide so that I can put my pants inside. Have a frost sole put on and a few nails around the toe." On December 12th, I was pleased to let my father know, "The box was received by me this evening, and I am glad they did come, as my shoes were worn out entirely. We have just returned from review today, and my hands were almost froze, so you can see that the gloves were equally welcome." It would have been foolish of me to pretend that I was never involved in battles. On March 22nd, I told Father a bit of war news. "No doubt you have heard of the evacuation of Centerville and Manassas. We spent a whole week without shelter on the last day of our march but one. It rained almost incessantly, and very heavy for about 36 hours. We marched all through it and lay in the woods all night. Often I came upon battle scenes after the firing was done, and I tried to relate to my father what I had seen. On April 14th, I described one such scene. Yesterday, I visited the scene of the Battle of July 21st last, which was First Bull Run, Manassas. But my space will not permit me to give any adequate idea of the ground. Suffice it to say that, from the number of graves, both sides must have suffered. Many of our men are buried not more than 26 inches under the ground. They appear to have been buried just where they fell. From the number of dead horses at the point, they must have suffered severely. There's just one string of dead horses along the whole line. It is reported that but 7 of Jeb Stuart's cavalry survived that day. I felt it only fair to keep my father apprised of what his soldier son's life was like. On April 22nd, I tried to separate myth from fact for him. During our stay at Manassas, I had the pleasure of visiting the scene of the Battle of July 21st, 1861. The masked batteries our men talked of were all myths so far as I could see. There had never been any fortifications except a rifle pit here and there. The masked batteries our men spoke of were merely common field pieces hid in a cedar thicket. The only advantage they had over our men was that at the opening of the battle they had 3 guns in position, and we still had to put ours in position. According to the report of citizens residing in the vicinity, it was they that suffered more than we did that day. Their losses were nearly 2 to 1. I wish such had been the case, but according to actual records, the Union forces had 460 killed, 1,124 wounded, and 1,313 captured or missing, whereas the Confederate losses were 1,982 killed or wounded. The great sadness is that soldiers die. Each loss is a heartache for loved ones, and our family was not immune. It was hard to hear the news that my brother-in-law Lowry was lost, but I tried to mitigate the family's suffering. On June 30th, I said to Father, "I am sorry that Lowry has been killed or taken prisoner, but as David Perry tells me, they could not find his body. I am inclined to the opinion that he has been taken prisoner. We cannot believe everything we hear now." I was particularly concerned for my sister Margaret and offered her words of encouragement. "I am inclined to the opinion that he is only a prisoner in the hands of the enemy. In all probability, he will turn up soon. I have lost faith in all camp reports and think that the men that saw him fall are big a liar as any of them. If we were to believe all the tales we hear after a battle, we would believe all the army dead and buried. But as such is not the case, and everything that we hear is nearly 9 times out of 10 false and fabricated by our own men. I am inclined to the opinion that this is some more of their cock and bull stories. I continued to insist to my father and sister that Lowry was not dead, and that we should hear the happy news soon. Sadly, such was not the case, for my brother-in-law and brother-in-arms was killed in the Battle of Fair Oaks in Virginia, May 31st, 1862. Like many of my comrades, there were times when I was weary, cold, wet, tired, discouraged, homesick, and sad. But never did my faith that the Union would be victorious die. Throughout my tenure as a soldier, I wrote home my predictions. 2 months into my service, I wrote my parents, "The coming month will write the history of the American Rebellion. The Grand Army of the Potomac has made a move forward, and as they advance, the rebel flanks yield before the Union Army. General McClellan is not to be trapped." I was precipitous in my estimation that the war was nearly over in October, but in March I remained hopeful, writing to my brother James, "I can give you but little news. You must look to the newspapers for that. Everything indicates an early peace. One prop after another is being taken from under the Confederacy, and ere long the last will be drawn and the baseless structure will fall, burying its founders in the ruins. I have every reason to believe that the month of May will see us a united people." Well, May passed, as did June, and the war raged on. However, I did not lose heart. Writing to father on July 4th, I amended my predictions. "McClellan has got his men where he wants them, and Richmond must follow them. The rebel capital is in all probability in ashes right now." Again, at the end of July, I wrote to Margaret, "General Pope is beginning to make the rebels fall back. They have either to take the oath of allegiance to the U.S. or go beyond the lines and stay there. This is the kind of man we want, and my word for this is it won't last much longer." By September, my predictions had not come true. Nevertheless, victory was always in my sights, as I told father from my camp in Centerville. "The rebels and the Union forces have fought for 3 days on the old Bull Run battlefield. The Rebs have fallen back but can't get away. Should we succeed here, and there is little doubt that we will, this will be the last battle of the war." Once again, I was overly optimistic. History proved me right, just not as soon as I would have liked. I allowed 8 days to pass before I sent father news that I knew he and my family did not want to hear. My letter of December 20th went as follows. "I was wounded 2 days after my last letter, and as we were to be moved to a general hospital, I thought I would wait until I found out where I was going to be before I wrote. I received 2 flesh wounds in the action of the 13th before Fredericksburg, but of which I think I will soon be well. They are both in my left leg. It is just 1 week today since I was wounded. My wounds are doing well. I must close for the present, as I am very tired. Despite the privation of the camps where I lived, despite the rigors of battle, and yes, despite the fact that I was wounded, I was ever proud to serve the Union cause, because as I wrote once in an essay about this land of our adoption, the lines have fallen to us in pleasant places, and we have got a goodly heritage." On January 8th, 1863, near the halfway point of my 3-year enlistment, Lyman C. Howard was kind to write to my family.
"Dear sir, since morning your brother has breathed his last. He died very suddenly. There was not one of us who thought that his end was so nigh. He was taken only 3 days ago with the fever. He is no more. With this, I close."